806 WGCI AM, Dust Radio 1390. I'm Cliff Kelly. This is the Cliff Kelly Show. The National Weather Service says that the winter storm has left Chicago alone for the weekend, and we will have a great day today. Although they say it's mainly cloudy, the sun is shining brightly now. Temperatures will be near 30, and winds will be out of the west 5 to 10 miles per hour. Tonight, Saturday, will be fair with low temperatures of 10 to 20 degrees. Tomorrow, Sunday, will be mainly sunny with a high in the middle 30s. Current temperatures down here on the lakefront is 21 degrees. At Midway is 15, and at O'Hare it is 14. It is sunny in the WGCI AM studio because we are honored and pleased to have a gentleman who is visiting with us, and he is none other than the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, the leader of the Nation of Islam. And, Brother Minister, thanks so much for coming out this morning.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and to you and to all of your listeners. It is the first time in approximately 3 years that I have consented to give this kind of interview. So I'm very, very happy and honored to be here with you and to be with your listening audience.
Well, we are honored to have you, and again, our sincere thanks for your coming in, because although, of course, we follow your teaching and all of the things you've been saying, we haven't been able to have this opportunity in some time, and we certainly appreciate it. I would like to start off our talk here today simply by asking you to give us the highlights for those who were not there of Saviours Day last Sunday. Some of our listeners who called in earlier, of course, said they were there, and there have been things in the newspaper that certainly were contradictory to what really went on. I was there, so I know what happened. And if there's something you would like to pass on to our listening audience that you feel they would like to know if, in fact, they weren't able to be at Saviours Day.
Well, first, I'd like to say that part 2 of that subject matter, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X, 28 years later, what really happened. Part 2 will be tomorrow at 2 p.m. at Mosque Mariam at 7351 Stony Island Avenue, and certainly the public is invited. Last Sunday at the UIC Pavilion, we tried to establish the basis for the greatness of Malcolm X. And we believe that the basis for his greatness, of course, is with God. But there has to be an agent that one meets in life that brings out of us what God has created within. And although historians would like to make it appear as though Malcolm X read the dictionary or read books in prison and all of a sudden became a mental giant, that is as far from the truth as the earth is from the sun. Malcolm X was gifted, black, and disillusioned, as most of our young people are. But while in prison, his brother brought him a message that turned his thinking around, and he began to correspond with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in what you might call a correspondence course. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad guided Malcolm's study, and he studied everything he could get his hands on in the prison library. And when he came out of prison, even though he only had an 8th grade education, he was able to handcuff so-called mental giants in debate because he could think outside of the sphere of the educational system of white America. And we give this credit to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I hoped to establish the fact that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is not and was not an immoral teacher, jealous and envious of his student. I wanted to establish the fact that he was, in fact, the most morally correct among us. And so we laid that foundation, and those who were present, who listened, came away with a new view of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I would hope not necessarily to trash Malcolm, because Malcolm's record is clear, but to help people to understand his teacher. And that same teacher who taught Malcolm is the base of any knowledge and popularity or respect and honor that comes to Louis Farrakhan. And so if the people will accept the apple, they will have to accept the tree. And if you believe that the apple is good, the tree that produced the apple cannot be bad.
There was something else that, well, there were two issues, actually, Minister Farrakhan, that a number of people certainly continue to talk about after the event. The first, which I think also was a president, correct me if I'm wrong, was the picture displayed of Master Farad Muhammad.
That is correct.
Right. Would you explain that, please?
Well, you know that for every effect, there's a cause. And certainly if the Honorable Elijah Muhammad only went to the 4th grade of school, and Malcolm X only went to the 8th grade of school, yet these two supposedly unlearned men by the standards of the world were able to shake the world, not just America, but the entire earth, with what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was teaching, then the question has to be raised, who taught Elijah Muhammad? How did he manage to transform the lives of tens and hundreds of thousands of people with a word out of his mouth? They say he was not the most articulate person, but he spoke so plainly that a fool could not err from listening to the magnificent guidance and counsel and wisdom from his lips. So we have to look now past Elijah Muhammad to who the person was who came to teach him. And Elijah Muhammad maintained up to the time of his departure from among us that he was taught by God in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, that God visited America, that God dwelled among us, as it was written that he would search the earth for the lost sheep, the rejected ones, and when he found them, he would bring them again and settle them on the mountains of Israel. That doesn't mean in that place, Israel, in the Middle East, but it means settle his chosen ones on the top of the nations of the earth. And so the bottom rail would become the top, and the least would become the most, and the weak would become the strong, because God would become our teacher and our guide. And if you look at the results of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, everyone that comes under his influence, they may come weak, but then you see them strong. They may come corrupt, but then you see them trying to live a moral life. They may come foolish, but then you see them acting and speaking with wisdom.
I think the surprise, Minister Farrakhan, to many was the fact that Master Farad Muhammad appears as a white person.
Yes.
Give us a little, if you can, background of Master Farad.
Well, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us of him that he was born in the holy city of Mecca, February the 26th, 1877. He had a black father and a white mother by design. Since the lost people were in the Western Hemisphere among white people, then someone would have to come to be able to get among the enemy and get next to the lost brother to start him pregnating with a truth that would ultimately free us all. And so it is written in the scripture, referring to the Son of Man in the book of Matthew, that as lightning shined from the east even unto the west, so would the coming of the Son of Man be. Now, from the genesis of the scriptures, we hear talk in the time in the history of Noah and the time in history of Lot of one coming at the end of the world called the Son of Man, that he would come out of the east and he would come to the west, because in the west would be those dry bones in the valley, or that dead people that would have to be raised to life. So the scripture says that wheresoever the eagles are gathered together, there shall the carcass be. The symbol of America is the eagle, and the remains of a once great people, the black people of America, are here, styled by Ezekiel as the dry bones in the valley. And God would come in sinful flesh to condemn sin in the flesh. He would come as a thief in the night without observation. And since he looked like Caucasian people, he could slip in and out among them without necessarily being observed. But all Eastern black people are observed and watched by the government and their agencies, because the wise of white people have been expecting a Messiah or deliverer to come to black people. And so it's written, he came as a thief in the night, meaning if you were waiting for the thief, he would never be able to rob you. And if he didn't know how to get in your house carefully and get next to the goods that he was looking for, then he wouldn't be a good thief. And so he came as a thief, not that he was a thief, right, but he came to get his people, the black people of North America.
The time's 8:19. I'm Cliff Kelly. This is WGCI AM, Dust Radio 1390. In our studio, we are very, very pleased to have the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. We're going to come back with more right after this. 821 WGCI AM, Dust Radio 1390. I'm Cliff Kelly. This is the Cliff Kelly Show. In our studio, we are honored to have the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, leader of the Nation of Islam, and what we've been doing for the first few moments of our discussion is talking about Saviours Day, and the minister, of course, stated that tomorrow will be part 2 out at the mosque, and everyone is invited to that. We'll talk more about that before we end, but I want to go back to Saviours Day just for a few moments before we get into some current issues, Mr. Minister. Also at the event last week, many people I've talked to who were there left a little early thinking that they would beat the rush out, and they missed the finale, which was, of course, the presentation of the 4 wives of the messenger and their families, which really was an amazing sight to many people because of not only what these people have done with their lives, but just the appearance and the accomplishment and all. But tell us what the real purpose of that was.
Well, no one knows a man better than his wife. We know the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as a magnificent teacher, reformer, guide, and messenger of God. A wife knows a husband more intimately, and so a wife can testify to the moral character of that man. And since it appears as though the aim of the movie was to exalt Malcolm X as a real moral man, and to show Elijah Muhammad as an abuser of women and one who molested women or mistreated women or took advantage of women, I wanted the public to see the wives of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the children that they produced for him and for us. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as I'm trying to establish, comes in the mold of the divine prophets and messengers of God. And if one is honest who is a Christian, or one is honest who is a Jew, or one is honest who is a Muslim, there never was a prophet in the scripture that didn't have more than one wife, starting with Abraham, who is the father of the righteous and the patriarch of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And yet nobody considers Abraham an immoral man, Moses an immoral man, David an immoral man, Solomon an immoral man, because he had wives. And so yesterday or Sunday, I wanted the public to hear the women. I didn't know what they were going to say. I didn't coach them in what to say. I wanted them to speak from their hearts about the man that they know, and then to present their children. Mm-hmm. And if you look in the face of his daughter from Sister Evelyn, you saw one of the most beautiful young women you could see, who is a mother of 6 children who happen to be my grandchildren. And that mother spoke of the moral character of her husband. Sister June Muhammad and her son Abdullah Muhammad, who is almost the image and likeness of Elijah Muhammad, clean, impeccably clean, and brilliant, and standing up for his father. And again, Sister Ola Muhammad and her son Kamal, who is the oldest of that new set of children. He's 31, I believe he said. Mm-hmm. He was one of the first young blacks to have a seat on the mercantile exchange. He's brilliant, college graduate, and he's the National Secretary of the Nation of Islam, working in the mission of his father. And lastly, Sister Tainetta Muhammad and 2 of her sons, Ishmael and Rasul Muhammad. Ishmael is my assistant minister here at Mosque Mariam, and Rasul is the minister of the mosque in Detroit, Michigan. Young, talented, brilliant, multilingual. Well, now, if we can tell a tree by the fruit it bears, you ought to be able to tell a man by his works. And if a man produces wise women and wise children, what does that say about that man? And since he's no longer among us, if he was so grotesque and bizarre and immoral an individual, would these women 30 years later speak so well and so strong and forthrightly about his moral conduct? I don't think so.
The other thing you stated that I'd like our listeners to hear, Minister Farrakhan, was the clarification of the term that the messenger used, quote, white devils, end quote. People have used this, as you know, throughout the decades to suggest that the message was one pregnant with racism.
Yes. Well, I didn't get into the scientific definition of the word devil. I will leave that for my subject matter tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And in part 2 of Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad, I would like to get more into detail of that history. But suffice it to say that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad used the term devil in reference to the actions of white people in total contravention to the divine standard set up by God and his prophets. What is a devil? A devil is a wicked person, an opposer of God, an adversary of the righteous principles and moral laws of God. And if we look at slavery, at murder, at kidnap, at lying, at adultery, at all of the things that God has spoken against, and you look at what has happened to us and what continues to happen to us at the hands of our enemies, then how would you characterize that behavior? If we're going to meet a devil after we are dead, what more could the devil do to us in death than what has happened to us in life in our sojourn in America? So he was presenting white people with a mirror that they could look into the mirror of their behavior measuring their behavior against the criterion of the moral laws established by God through his prophets, and see that they are as far off from that standard as you would say devil is from God. And so, however, I must be clear that in 1973, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad called me after I made a broadcast, and he told me that he wished that I would not use that term anymore. It wasn't that white folk had become saints all of a sudden, but he understood that that term had lived out its usefulness in breaking the attraction between us and the Caucasian, that we could pull away from them, examine what has happened to them as well as to ourselves, and begin the process of rebuilding ourselves according to the divine law and dictates of God. Again, we are so wicked in our behavior today. You would wonder who is wreaking havoc in our community. It is certainly not white folk there ripping us off, robbing us now. It is others, and it is we ourselves. So the Bible is clear. Babylon the Great is fallen, and has become a habitation of devils, meaning that the vast majority of the people are in opposition to God and his law and are absolutely acting wickedly.
One other thing, and then we're going to go to contemporary issues, Minister Farrakhan. You mentioned the depiction of some of the things in the movie Malcolm X. In the movie The Nation, which is a documentary about the Nation of Islam, produced by Junie Smith and others, there is in that movie the attempt on the part of Malcolm to be restored to his place within the nation prior to his assassination. That was left out of the other. Is that true? And would you clarify that?
From what I understand, Malcolm X was trying to get back to the nation just prior to his assassination. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, from what I understand, received a letter from Malcolm, and that letter is available today. I don't have it, but there are some scholars who have that letter or copies of it, that he had written to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, repenting of the things that he had said and manifesting his desire to once again become a part of the Nation of Islam. I don't believe the Honorable Elijah Muhammad accepted that offer of repentance at that time. I once asked Elijah Muhammad about rebellion, and when we rebel against God, why does he not send us out of his mercy a prophet or messenger immediately? He said, well, when you're a child and you rebel against your father, he is not duty-bound to accept your repentance when you first state your offer of repentance. He might want to watch you to see whether in fact you are sincerely repentant, or is the storm gathering around you such that the storm is forcing you back other than your heart truly in sorrow for what you have done. So I believe that's the approach of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to Malcolm, and unfortunately Malcolm was assassinated before he could get back to the nation.
8:33, our in-studio guest, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. We shall return with more right after this. 8:37, WGCI AM, Dust Radio 1390. This is the Cliff Kelly Show. Our in-studio guest, none other than the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, the head of the Nation of Islam, and after a 3-year hiatus in this kind of activity, we are honored and pleased to have him here today. We will be taking calls in a while, 591-3878, 591-3878. Before we move to some contemporary issues, Brother Minister, tomorrow is going to be another interesting event, and there was something that you started to say at the pavilion, that you never got to, and it was relative to the intent or the purpose of Warner Brothers and the movie. You stated it, and then you never said. Are you going to cover that tomorrow?
Yes,
All right.
God willing, I hope to. You know, we have to ask ourselves the question, though Malcolm X has been and is a great force in black American life, yet Hollywood has never desired to make a movie on any black person in our history who has done great, great work. So the question we have to ask is, what was the motive of Warner Brothers? And most of the people in our listening audience may not know that 30 years ago, the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith had dossiers out on Malcolm as they have dossiers on Louis Farrakhan. And at that time, Malcolm X was considered a leading black anti-Semite. And because 30 years ago, it was Malcolm X who exposed the fact that the NAACP was really led not by the blacks who were in front of the movement, but by Mr. Spingarn, who was the power behind the throne, so to speak, and that the liberal civil rights movement had behind it certain members of the Jewish community who led the civil rights struggle, in which doors could be opened that we may not have been prepared to take advantage of, but the members of the Jewish community certainly were. Well, all of a sudden now, Malcolm is sanitized, and Warner Brothers wants to spend millions of dollars to make a movie about a man that they labeled anti-Semitic. How did that happen? What was the reason for that? Tomorrow answers.
We're not going to get into this now, but I would just like our listeners to know that the Nation of Islam has published what I think is an excellent book entitled The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, and it is well documented, and I recommend it for your reading. Let's talk about some problems right here before we go to international events, because some of our callers had asked me to ask you specific questions, and we will get to the phones, folks, in a moment. One of the things that's of great interest, because we certainly need it, the economy is not only bad for us, it's bad for them also, and of course, as a result of that, people are talking about economic development. The Wall Street Journal last week had a whole special section on black entrepreneurship, and one of the things that they mentioned in it was the cash crunch for black entrepreneurs, and I'm quoting, "Raising money is often the biggest hurdle." Well, it certainly is, because we recognize the fact, of course, that the banks are certainly, all things being equal, more prone to grant a loan or for capitalization of a business to a white person than an African American. You have come out with a 3-year economic program that you're beginning, and I would like for you to give us some comments on that.
Well, the 3-year economic plan was advanced first in 1964 by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, because he recognized then and warned us as a people then that black people would have to get up and do something for ourselves before we were forced to do it. And he recognized the day that the plants would close and black people would be out of jobs and hungry in the streets of America with nowhere to go. So in advance of that event taking place, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad asked the 5 million workers at that time in 64 if they would just sacrifice 5 cents a day, 25 cents a week, $1 a month, $12 a year to a national savings economic plan. And at the end of a year, we could have at that time accrued or amassed $60 million, and at the end of 3 years, we would have had approximately $180 million to invest in a future for our people. that future had to first involve land. We cannot build an economy for our people without acquisition of land. And as you know, the social scientists and those economists are saying that by the year 2000, at the rate that black people are losing land, we will be absolutely landless. And when we are landless, we are totally dependent on others to provide us with the basic necessities of life. So we have reintroduced the 3-year economic savings plan of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to begin that process of trying to create an economic survival for our people.
Excellent, and we'll be talking more about that. The other thing I wanted to mention before we talk about international problems, this economic plan is obviously precipitated by the recognition on the part of the nation that the brother out in the street, Minister Farrakhan, is in big trouble. And you went on ad infinitum about the various problems, the crime, miseducation, homelessness, all kinds of problems. What can we tell those young people now relative to their hope for the future? Everywhere they look, there's a problem.
We cannot successfully talk to our young people about coming away from the sale and distribution of drugs if we cannot offer them an alternative to that lifestyle. We have more drug salesmen in the black communities of America than IBM, Mary Kay, and a host of companies that employ tens of thousands of salespersons. This seems to be one of the only ways that black people can make money to deal with the problems, the economic problems that they have. And with the cities exploding with crime and greater violence, there are no real big corporations in the country that want to invest in the cities or set up factories in the cities as long as the climate of crime and violence exists. So we believe that since our people still have money, that we have to find ways to attract that money to do something for self. I have learned that Louis Farrakhan is attracting tens of thousands of people across the country, and that at least a third of black people seem to admire Louis Farrakhan. Well, what good will that do if I can't turn that admiration into something of concrete value for the good of our people? So I'm asking black people to sacrifice $10 a month, $120 a year to the 3-year economic savings plan. There are tens of thousands of acres of farmland that farmers want to sell that we need to buy. We need 1 million acres of land. Either the government can lease it to us or allow us to buy it. And with the backing of black people, we believe we can produce food, clothing, and shelter, which we spend billions of dollars on now. We might as well put those billions back into our own pockets.
When we come back, Minister Farrakhan, I'd like you to give me an opinion of the new administration, the President Bill Clinton. 8:47. We'll be back right after this. 8:49, WGCI AM, Dusty Radio 1390. You're listening to the Cliff Kelly Show. We have with us the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. We've been discussing a number of things. I asked the minister before the break your opinion of the Clinton administration as it relates to our people. Do you see an improvement, or what do you think?
Well, all new administrations give hope. And as I watched his inauguration, I saw the tremendous amount of hope that black people have in the new administration. And certainly he has put more blacks around him than any previous president. However, I would warn our people that no benevolent white person in the White House will be able to solve the problems of black people. He might be able to create a better atmosphere in the country for us but we have ultimately to take the responsibility of solving problems on our own shoulders. The tremendous federal deficit of over $4 trillion, with the government only taking in taxes each year a little over $1 trillion, and the budget is about $1.5 trillion, which means that there is a federal deficit each year of over $400 billion. What does this mean to black people? Do you think that we can go with our hat in our hands to Washington today to get a handout? I don't think so. What the president is saying, not only to us, but he's saying to white America, you're going to have to tighten your belt. As I spoke in Atlanta in October in a speech called The Torchlight for America, I said that President Clinton was going to have to cut spending, he was going to have to raise taxes, and his taxes would have to be across the board, and he would have to ask the American people to sacrifice in order for America to come out of this condition. And if he did not do this, America would be going under, and of course, since we are so dependent on America, we would be the first, and we would feel it the hardest.
And do you think that the Congress is going to permit that the cuts that really need to be made? We have people like Senator Byrd, Robert Byrd, Minister Farrakhan, who is called the Prince of Pork, and you know what I mean. And we've got, as I mentioned to one of the brothers who called earlier, we've got a shipbuilding yard in Philadelphia that even the Pentagon wants closed, but the politicians won't allow it to be closed.
Exactly.
You know, you've got so much of this.
The basic problem in economics is really a spiritual problem at the root of it. Greed, immorality, and corruption. The corporations want to keep producing profit at the tremendous rate that they have been having profits at the expense of the working class and the poor. And so when you have greed and corruption and immorality and gross selfishness, where one state wants an industry there at all costs, and they will fight to keep that industry even though it would mean loss to the general populace of the country. So when you have that kind of selfishness and self-interest that you put above the national interest, then Clinton can ask for things, and he can give reasons why things should be done. But unless the spiritual problems in America are attacked by the spiritual leaders and teachers, then the people will follow their greed and their self-interest, and any program for the salvation of the nation might fall because of that aspect.
That's an excellent point, because as he stated during the campaign, that the president should have a line-item veto, and you haven't heard him say that since he won. He met with the Democratic leadership, with Foley and the others, and I guess they let him know right then, that you will never get. Don't even bring it up.
Well, as I watch the president, I believe in many instances he means well. However, there are forces that he didn't reckon with before becoming president that he has to reckon with now as president. I watched him with the Haitian issue, back away from that. I watched him make a statement that sent a signal to Saddam Hussein that perhaps his administration would work out some arrangement, a better arrangement with Saddam Hussein, and immediately he reversed his field and said that he would never, the policy would never change toward Iraq as long as Saddam Hussein is in power. We watched with the gays in the military, and we watch how that is weakening. And so the forces arrayed against his vision are tremendous. And the question is, will he be able to withstand those pressures? And if he does, at what price?
You mentioned Saddam Hussein, and that's a good point to segue into some international questions. What, in your opinion, was the benefit, if any, of the Gulf War? And why are we continuing to harass this man when the State of Israel can certainly tell the United Nations after the Security Council passes resolutions that we're not going to go along with him, and we do nothing?
I think it just happened that Saddam Hussein, who was financed billions of dollars by the Saudis as well as the U.S. government intervention to see that Saddam got plenty of money because of two evils, Imam Khomeini and the Islamic Republic of Iran. Saddam Hussein was the lesser of the evils, so billions of dollars from Saudi Arabia and other places went to finance the building up of the army of Saddam Hussein. And when that war ended in somewhat of a stalemate, Saddam Hussein then was the most powerful military force in that area. And so he called Kuwait the 19th province, part of Iraq, and originally it was. And when the British left, they set up these sheikdoms, and these sheikdoms have literally done the bidding, for the most part, of Western powers. And so Saddam Hussein talked to influential people, particularly the American ambassador, and he was given the go-ahead to go into Kuwait. And then after he goes into Kuwait, Margaret Thatcher comes and meets with Mr. Bush somewhere out here, or they talk. And then the next day, Mr. Bush is telling Saddam Hussein to get out. He sent confusing signals to the man. The man took over what he believed was his, and now he had to get out. Now his pride is on the line. He's got a strong military, so there's confrontation, and he's not going to back down, and Bush is not going to back down, and so a war ensues. Now, this war was not to protect democracy, because there is no democracy in the sheikdoms or in Saudi Arabia. So what was the war over? It was to protect the oil interests of the West. And so American soldiers, particularly black and poor, are there now in the Gulf, not now, but then, to fight for what? For America to have greater power in that area, greater influence in Saudi, because they could not trust the Saudis to protect the vital interests, oil interests of the West. And so, again, they made money from the war. One senator boasted that they made a profit because they made the Saudis pay. They made the rest of the world come in and pay. And as a result, in the rebuilding of Kuwait, the billions of dollars that the Kuwaitis had in banks throughout the world had to be used. And who benefited? Western companies again charged the Kuwaitis tremendous money, and so the Kuwaitis are feeling the crunch, and the Saudis were feeling the crunch. And so that, in my mind, is why they jumped on Saddam Hussein, because they don't want an Arab power that they don't control.
The time is 8:59. Minister Farrakhan, when we come back after our news break, I want to ask you just briefly about Africa. And then, as I promised our callers, and we've got people who have been holding, we will get to phone calls. It's 9 o'clock. This is WGCI AM, Dust Radio 1390. I'm Cliff Kelly. Our in-studio guest, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. Stay tuned for the Week in Review news. We will be back with more. 9:06, WGCI AM, Dust Radio 1390. I'm Cliff Kelly. This is the Cliff Kelly Show. The temperature is 21 at the lakefront, 15 at Midway, 14 at O'Hare. The National Weather Service says today is going to be pleasant. It will be mostly cloudy with high temperatures near 30 degrees. Winds will be out of the west 5 to 10 miles per hour. Tonight will be fair with low temperatures of 10 to 20 degrees. Tomorrow, Sunday, mostly sunny with a high in the middle 30s. So we are pleased that we missed that big storm and things are going to get better. Program note, as you know, in our studio is the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. We have not gotten the calls because we've been talking about a number of very important issues. And we have been told that the program will be extended to 10 o'clock today. And, of course, the show that is normally on at 9:30 will be heard next week. That is Business Building Business with the Cosmopolitan Chamber of Commerce and our friend Miss Witherspoon. So we are pleased that in the show, Normal is his name, had asked a number of weeks ago that what is the influence that Minister Farrakhan has in Somalia because there are so many Muslims there, and what does he think about what's going on? He called again today, and I made sure that I would ask.
I can't say with knowledge what influence I may have in Somalia. However, that problem would not be there were it not for the Cold War. The former leader of Somalia, Siad Barre, it appears, was socialist in his leanings. And because he was socialist and in such a geopolitically strategic area as the Horn of Africa, and you must remember that at a time when the Soviet Union and America were battling for supremacy, the Horn of Africa was a very, very important area to both the Soviet Union and the United States and her Western allies. So the CIA got persons inside of Somalia who were dissatisfied with Siad Barre and armed them. So you have American, Western arms, and Soviet arms in Somalia. After Siad Barre was ousted and had to flee the country, there were several camps, but none of these camps had the power or magnetism to draw the country cohesively together to form a new government. And so it degenerated into what they call warlords, but it was actual people fighting for power. And in the process of this fighting for power, the farmers couldn't plant their crops and or their seeds to bring up crops, and hunger and starvation became a result. And so America stepped in and, of course, brought food. And America should step in because she helped to create the problem.
Is that the real reason, though, Minister Farrakhan? A humanitarian effort? And I'm only suspicious, apprehensive, because of the history of this country. Well, humanitarianism is not our strong suit.
There's always a political agenda, though it would not be wise to say that to the American people. So to say that we're there to feed the hungry is acceptable to the masses of the people, while the fact remains that Europe is in trouble. It could break out with the fighting in Bosnia, Herzegovina, and the breakup of Yugoslavia. This could lead to a great and wide conflagration in Europe. And again, the nuclear power that was once in the hands of the Soviet Union is now in many hands, and some of that technology is being sold and being bought by China and other powers in the world, and they fear that even Iran may now have some nuclear capability because of the Muslims in Kazakhstan and other places that have nuclear capabilities. And so America needs to be in the Horn of Africa, even as America needs to have a firm foothold in Saudi Arabia and in the Gulf to protect her, quote-unquote, vital interests. So America would be interested in establishing a government among the Somalis that would be favorable to American interests or Western interests.
And perhaps the need to even establish a military base at some point.
Exactly.
Right, I understand. You mentioned the situation with the proliferation of nuclear warfare or nuclear capability. Even Northern Korea now supposedly has enough to create a nuclear weapon. With the world seemingly to be even a less safe place than it was before, what do we see, in your opinion, this administration doing, or what can be done? What, in your opinion, can be done, Minister Louis Farrakhan, to help abate some of the unbelievable tension that exists? We have situation in Europe, as you mentioned. You've got Africa itself, warfare in Rwanda, in Angola. We've got the people dying in Somalia, but the Sudan is being wiped out by a plague. You've got Zaire, which certainly is not going well, and of course we know the problem in South Africa. Then you go to the Middle East. The Palestinian question is still the major problem there. This president, in his book, Putting People First, states right out that the Palestinians don't deserve a state because they should not be able to influence the future of Israel. How that, I don't know what rationale that is, but that's what he's saying. Where are we going? What can be done to help avert what seems to be a worsening crisis?
Well, as a spiritual person, a person that believes in the scriptures, we don't see America averting the crisis that she's facing simply because the forces are present, and President Clinton seems to be bowing to those forces where it doesn't make proper change reality. America is enjoying what we would call the lull before the storm. There is this euphoria over the breakup of the Soviet Union, but no one is taking a very close look at Asia. The fastest growing economies in the world are in Asia. Japan, Taiwan, China, Korea, even Malaysia, and though that area of the world, their economies are considered the fastest growing in the world. I read an article recently in the New York Times about China, and they said that if China continues in the way she is going, she will have given to each Chinese person, 1,250,000,000 of them, a much higher standard of living going into the new century. So here you have Japan importing shiploads of plutonium. Of course, they say it is to set up nuclear plants that would give them energy because they don't want to be dependent on oil. But Japan is now growing and being asked by America to take more of the burden of defense of the Asian communities, and so she will be building an army. She will be building a navy. Not to think of the vast army of China and her growth in technology. When I was in Beijing, at the time that the American rocket exploded with the astronauts on it, and subsequent to that, several rockets were destroyed in their flight. The Chinese had developed a rocket, and they were beginning to compete for the business of putting satellites in space. So what you have is Asia coming. Mm-hmm. And Asia is a power that refused to bow to Bush's desire for more democracy when he sent his man there after the breakup of the Soviet Union. And frankly, they told him, look, we don't need that mm-hmm. here. Mm-hmm. And so America should not be lulled to sleep. So Colin Powell, in my judgment, in asking the president to keep a strong military force, is more close to the mark than the president may be. But now the president, of course, is being asked to cut military spending, and he will do that while he's trying to keep America strong. But when he cuts, he has to cut the standing army in Europe. And if he does, how will that affect the black community? There you've got tens of thousands of black soldiers coming back to the United States to face the reality of no jobs. And now they're trained to kill, but they have no jobs. So what what more will that produce of internal strife and conflict in the United States? As the Bible says, and I believe it to be true, the worst is yet to come. And with the bombing, the alleged bombing yesterday in the World Trade Center, this is not a good omen at all for the problems that America is facing internally as well as throughout the world.
Our guest in studio, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. The time is 9:18. Our number is 591-3878, 591-3878. Program note, we are going to continue until 10 o'clock. Paris, good morning.
Good morning, Brother Cliff.
How are you? Thanks for holding.
Yes, sir. And I'd just like to apologize for a couple of comments I made earlier about the sisters. But to go into this, Cliff, a lot of our black people, we hear, and we do not listen. And that's the reason why we will follow anyone who comes along with a good song, and we will make him rich while we become stupid and ignorant and poor. And that's the reason why I'm saying this, Cliff. We got to stop believing in a man. We got to do for self, as the teacher said, and not believe in man and not listen to what man is saying. Because like I said before, Cliff, we got three people. We got house Negroes, Theo Hands, and we have the free slaves. And the house Negro will continue to use the field hands to make himself look good. But see, I'm a free slave, and I don't give a damn about neither one of them. Balak Allah, Brother Farrakhan.
I would like to make a comment to you, my dear brother Paris. I would agree to a point, but you know, the problems of man are created by man, and they are solved through man. As a Muslim, you know that God has never sent anything other than man to help guide man to the solutions to problems. It was a man in the days of Noah, Lot, and the children of Israel. It was a man in the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It was a man in the time of Jesus. And it is said in the scriptures of both Bible and Quran that it will be a man today. But here's the problem. There are many liars, thieves, cutthroats that are out there in the noble name of unity, in the noble name of salvation, ripping people off. So the people themselves have to have sufficient knowledge to be able to test the spirit, the wisdom, and the program of the men who parade themselves before the public as so-called saviors, deliverers, etc. The public should not be gullible. And this is why, at the mosque, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad instituted searching, not just because we didn't want weapons in the mosque, but as Paul said, we have to prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. Take nothing on face value. Look deeply into every man, every teaching, every organization, but make your decision based upon actual facts. There is a man who will deliver us, and I do believe that that man is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
921, our number is 591-3878. Our in-studio guest, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. Harold, good morning. Thanks for holding. Are you there? Maybe not. We'll go on. James, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you, sir? Thanks for holding.
Yeah, I just want to ask Louis Farrakhan a question. Now, we, as a people, a nationality of people, but then we need each other. You know, I mean, we all striving for the same destination. I mean, it's one goal. But what I'm saying is, you and you know the way. I mean, you done traveled all around the world, and you know, but my teaching says that the Muslims come from Hagar, an Egyptian woman, and the Creator's chosen people were Hebrew Israelites. Is that true or false?
Oh, brother, that needs a lot of explanation. If you would ask your question, I would try my best to explain it. Is that your question?
Well, what I'm saying is we were God's chosen people, the same as Moses and Jesus and all the prophets. On the back of the dollar bill, you see the pyramid and the all-seeing eye. Well, the Creator performed miracles and wonders to bring us out of the bondage of Egypt. But see his wife, Abraham's first wife, bare him no children. Mm-hmm. And he had a handmaid, an Egyptian woman whose name was Hagar. And this is what now Malcolm X, he
James, have you got a question for the minister? We got a lot of people holding.
I would like to comment on the things that he has said, and the questions that he's raised. Thank you very much, Brother James. No, Muslims do not spring from an Egyptian woman, Hagar. The word Muslim is an Arabic word which means one who believes in submitting his or her will entirely to do the will of Allah. According to the teachings of the Holy Quran, this is the nature in which God created us. So my nature is to submit to the will of God. That didn't come through Hagar. That didn't come through Abraham. It really didn't come through the Prophet Muhammad. It came by the creation of God himself. Now, Hagar was to be a sign. This is why every Muslim who goes to Mecca has to travel between the two hills, the Safa and the Marwa, to follow the path of Hagar. Why Hagar? She was put out in the wilderness with no help for her baby. So the black woman in America is really in the wilderness producing babies, but she has no man to give her aid and comfort and protection. So Hagar had to rely on God. She looked to the hills, but there was no help coming from the hills. The help came from the baby, or at the foot of the baby, a well of Zamzam, as it is called today, bubbled up, and the baby survived, and so did Hagar. And if you look at the black woman in America today, she knows God so much better than the man because she's had to rely on God to pull her through. So she's making children at the root with a God consciousness, and all they need is the presence of that voice of truth from the Messiah that would guide the children of Hagar, and that's the black people of America, whom I believe are the chosen people of God. The word Jew or Israelite in the Bible is a name to depict the chosen people of God. And so in the book of Revelations it says, there are those who say they are Jews and are not, and I will make them of the synagogue of Satan. Everybody that says they're a Jew are not Jews, for the New Testament says the Jew is not the Jew outwardly, but the Jew inwardly by the purification or circumcision of the heart.
Minister Louis Farrakhan, 925, Cliff Kelly, WGCI AM, Dust Radio 1390. Joe, good morning.
Yeah, how you doing?
Fine.
Yeah, I'd like to ask him, why is it that he wants somebody to donate money to his cause when he could do like all the other organizations or corporations and sell stock? You know, if I'm going to donate something to something, I like to get some money in return, you know. And I think if he do it that way, he would probably get more people interested instead of them just giving him money outright. And secondly, I don't understand is that, you know, it's been proven many times before that we didn't come from East Africa, we came from West Africa, and there's more than just one religion on the continent. And about the way the world is going now, the only way we're going to solve our problem is we got to unite with the continent of Africa, and the continent of Africa got to become united itself. And so that's my comment.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
First, you know, brother, when a person is honored and respected by the community, that person has a responsibility to the community that honors and respects him. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad was believed in by thousands of people, and he asked us to contribute to a plan that would help us out of our economic woes. I'm only following in his footsteps by asking the same. And if you look at what we have done, we haven't bought stock in the cigarette companies or in the liquor companies or in the dope. We haven't bought stock. We don't own the house where we live or the apartment that we live in. We haven't bought any stock in General Motors. We haven't bought any stock in Ford or Chrysler. in General Electric, in Pillsbury. We are just here. If I am a man that is trusted, and I have been consistent for nearly 40 years in this work, then I'm asking you to trust me that I will not sell you out, I will not rob and deceive you, and if you back me, I will show you that the teaching of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is exact and right for our people. And secondly, yes, many of us did come from West Africa, but as black people, West Africa is not our home, nor is East Africa our home. The whole earth, 57,255,000 square miles of land coming up out of water is our home. And that's why when you travel to China, you'll find black Chinese who were there before the Chinese, so-called Chinese or yellow man, got there. If you go to Japan, you'll find black Japanese. If you go to India, you'll find that the original Indians are jet black. If you go to Mexico, you'll find relics to show that the black man was there before anybody else. We just chose the best part of the earth to originate civilization, and that was in East Africa along the Nile Delta up into what is called the Tigris and Euphrates and what is called the Holy Land. That was all populated by black people in the beginning, and we spread out from there to west, to south, to east, to the islands of the Pacific, and that's why we're all over the earth, because we are the original people of the earth. Thank you for your comment.
Time's 9:29. I'm Cliff Kelly. This is WGCI AM, Dust Radio 1390. Again, a program note. We are going to continue our discussion with the Honorable Louis Farrakhan till 10 o'clock. So if you're holding, we are going to attempt to get to the phone call, and we trust that you will listen. The Cosmopolitan Chamber of Commerce will air on Sunday at 11 a.m. So the show that would normally take place now, Business Building Business at 9:30, with the Cosmopolitan Chamber of Commerce, will air tomorrow at 11 o'clock, and we are pleased to have this extra time with the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. Stay tuned. We'll take a break. We'll be back. The time is 9:33. This is WGCI AM, Dusty Radio 1390. And again, we are pleased to have in our studio the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, head of the Nation of Islam, and a program note. The program Business Building Business, sponsored by the Cosmopolitan Chamber of Commerce, with Sharice Witherspoon, will be heard tomorrow at 11 a.m. on WGCI, Dusty Radio 1390. And we are pleased to have an extended period to talk with the minister, and we are going to go back to the phones. The time is 9:34. Laura, good morning.
Yes, good morning.
How are you?
Mr. Kelly, I'm doing fine. All praise is due to Allah. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Minister.
Wa alaikum salam. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you, and how is your family?
Fine. Good to hear your voice.
Well, I call all the time. I don't want the people to think that I do not send you messages from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, because I do. And I'm very thankful that Allah had you to get on the air and admit to the public that my father, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, personally called you in 1973 and asked you, or said, I think you said he would appreciate it if you would not use the word devil. Now, I'm very certain that one reason why this government is in the turmoil that it is in is because of disobedience on the part of the laborers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. There is no excuse for this government to be in this condition or for our people to be in this condition. It is not necessary for there to be a call for more money from the people if the laborers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had obeyed his dictates. And all of you know that for a year and a half before his departure from us, he left me over the nation. And, Brother Minister, you were truthful enough to state this on 79th Street, that whenever the messenger left the country, he left the nation in my hands. And unfortunately, because of what we are trying, and I say we, I'm not guilty of this, but I'm using we, out of intelligence, because of the fact that we, the followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who were charged with holding this country together in his physical absence among us because of the fact that greed and avarice, just what you're charging this world with, those who are over all of the groups, and there are 12 groups, whether or not the public understands this, it corresponds with the scripture.
Okay, Laura, do you have a question? Because we have a lot of people, and we want to get as many as we can.
Brother Kelly?
Yes.
I do not have any question. All I would like all of you to do is to read 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 10 and 11. And when you are ready to find out what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad wants you to do to get out of this mess, you can call me and I'll let you know.
Thank you, Laura.
I'd just like to make a brief comment.
Mm-hmm.
This sister who has just called us was the personal secretary of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And it is true that many times when he would leave, she was the trusted one that he would leave in charge of affairs. And no one can take that from you, my dear sister. And it also is true. I don't know about keeping the country together, but I do know that if we, the followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, had carried out his dictates and teachings as he had given it to us, our people would not be in the condition that they are in. When the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was among us, and we were one nation, undivided, the black community was constantly growing in knowledge of self and in economic development, and you could see that wherever the presence of Muslims was strong, crime and violence and rape and havoc and drugs were beginning to diminish. But as you know, my dear sister, when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad departed from us, and the nation under the leadership of Imam Warithuddin Muhammad took a different course from the message of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, then divisions broke out. And just as it was in the time of Moses, when Moses went to the mountain, or Jesus, when he was, according to Scripture, crucified, when he departed, the disciples fell into a state of disrepair. This also happened during the time of Prophet Muhammad. Whenever a great one goes, and there is no one of sufficient magnetism, as we pointed out in Somalia, to pull all of the groups together under one roof again, then the process of disintegration takes place. I'm very happy, though, to say that when Moses went, there were 10 or more who had rods, or 12, and only one rod budded of all the groups that there were in the time of Moses. And so it is today. The rod of Louis Farrakhan is budding and will continue to bud, and as God blesses me with more and more success in carrying out the teachings and program of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I would hope that all of these dissidents would come back and let's sit down and plan the future of our people, because you're right, we are charged with this responsibility. And remember, we were taught, what is the duty of a civilized man? And if the civilized man fails to perform the duty, what must be done? I intend to get out from under that chastisement by doing my duty by our people.
940, Minister Louis Farrakhan. This is WGCI AM, Dust Radio 1390. You're listening to the Cliff Kelly Show. Harvey, good morning.
Well, good morning.
How are you?
How you doing?
Good.
I have a statement and a question to make.
Okay.
Why is it that I'm a salesman all through the black community, and it seems to be this allegiance with the Arab community, and when I deal most of the stores in our community is controlled by Arabs, and I want to know why isn't that none of the black leadership is saying that? Because I see it day in and day out the way the Arabs disrespect our people. Disrespect our women, our men, and all that. And why isn't nobody saying anything about this? And they seem to have no allegiance, whether they're Muslim or not, to our people. You know, they seem like they are really working hand in hand with the white man on this conspiracy to destroy our people. And why I want to really know why isn't anybody saying anything about this? I heard people talk about the Koreans and the Vietnamese and all that, but nobody's saying anything about the Arabians in our community, because because I sell to these stores, it really does hurt my heart to see my people treated like this.
Okay.
And I don't know why isn't anybody saying anything
I understand
about
your
this.
question. Thank you, Harvey. Before
Harvey,
the minister responds, I'd like to say that there are things being said. In fact, I moderated a program over at Malcolm X just a few weeks ago that Malcolm X put on through Brendan Montgomery, who was the head of their public relations, based on exactly that. And one of the participants was an Arab, and of course many people in the audience were saying exactly what you're saying. So it is talked about, Harvey. Yes.
And I have mentioned it several times myself. My dear brother, the problem is not the Arabs. The problem is us.
Right.
The Jews were in the position years ago that the Arabs and Koreans are in now. They owned all the stores, or many of the stores in the black community. They were much wiser in their treatment of black people, however, than the Arabs and the Koreans. Now that the Arabs are here and the Koreans are here, they have a disrespect for us because we have a disrespect for ourselves. The Arabs don't respect black people. They don't respect black women by and large. They make their money from being in our community, but many of them are Muslims. Some of them are Christians. But those who are Muslims, they know that the Quran forbids the selling of swine flesh or the eating of swine flesh, but they have pork all over their stores. They sell alcohol to our people, although the Quran forbids the drinking of alcohol. And the Prophet himself said, a man is not a Muslim until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. So evidently, these Arabs don't consider us a brother or sister. They see our savage condition and they exploit it to our detriment and for their betterment. But whose fault is it? We can't fault the Koreans for seeing an opportunity to develop an economic base in our community. We can't fault the Arabs, the Jews, or anybody else. We have to look at ourselves. We could replace every one of their businesses if we would recognize that the duty and responsibility is for us to do something for ourselves. But when a black man sets up a business, we'll walk by the brother's business to take our money to those who disrespect us. So even though they are wrong in what they're doing, the greater wrong is on our part. We have to rise up and put these people out of our community by getting into business, doing the sales and the service of our own community and giving our people our community's needs. And when we wake up, brother, and do that, and fall in love with ourselves and respect ourselves, then you'll find the Arabs, the Koreans, the Jews, the whites, all people will respect us once we become self-respecting.
9:44. Ali, thanks for holding.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, sir. How are you today?
All right, all right. Good morning, Minister Farrakhan.
Good morning, my brother.
Okay, I'm about a 53-year-old man, and I've been through the system, been through the hard times and the good times, and I found that I can survive into the United States way of life. Not that I like it, but I've been disappointed by our politicians. I've been disappointed by our ministers. Now, I would like to ask you one question, and I hope you understand you're talking to a man, not someone that don't understand the ways of life. I would like to, why is it that when I meet, that I love what they say, but when I meet most of the Muslim brothers, they are so nasty and so cold. See, what I'm trying to say, we want someone to love, and don't tear us down when you meet us in the street and I'm better than you. So if you would please address this for us so that we could understand the ways of the Muslim, the ways that you're trying to teach, I would appreciate it.
Thank
you, Ali.
One of the first things that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad made us to see is the value of ourselves and our people. And one of the things that was a hallmark of Muslim conduct was the courteousness that you would see in the Muslim brothers and sisters. Of course, in every movement and in every group, there are those who refuse to come under that discipline, and so you will have those who may treat you nastily, but that's not the way. That's not what we're taught. Why, I mean, you can be meet Christians that will be nasty to you, and the so-called Christians are shooting Christians, cutting Christians. That's not the teaching of Jesus Christ. So what we have to...
9:44. Ali, thanks for holding.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, sir. How are you today?
All right, all right. Good morning, Minister Farrakhan.
Good morning, my brother.
Okay, I'm about a 53-year-old man, and I've been through the system, been through the hard times and the good times, and I found that I can survive into the United States way of life. Not that I like it, but I've been disappointed by our politicians. I've been disappointed by our ministers. Now, I would like to ask you one question, and I hope you understand you're talking to a man, not someone that don't understand the ways of life. I would like to, why is it that when I meet, that I love what they say, but when I meet most of the Muslim brothers, they are so nasty and so cold. See, what I'm trying to say, we want someone to love, and don't tear us down when you meet us in the street and I'm better than you. So if you would please address this for us so that we could understand the ways of the Muslim, the ways that you're trying to teach, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Ali.
One of the first things that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad made us to see is the value of ourselves and our people. And one of the things that was a hallmark of Muslim conduct was the courteousness that you would see in the Muslim brothers and sisters. Of course, in every movement and in every group, there are those who refuse to come under that discipline, and so you will have those who may treat you nastily, but that's not the way. That's not what we're taught. Why, I mean, you can meet Christians that will be nasty to you, and the so-called Christians are shooting Christians, cutting Christians. That's not the teaching of Jesus Christ. So what we have to do is enforce the discipline even more strongly to make sure that when our brothers and sisters are among the people, that we always treat our people the way we wish to be treated. That's the way the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught me, and that's the way I am teaching our brothers and sisters. And I would hope that all of us as black people, if you're Muslim or Christian, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said the best religion. He didn't say it was Islam. He didn't say it was Christianity or Judaism. He said the best religion is found in these words, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And I'm trying to practice that religion. What about you?
All right. You're listening to the extended Cliff Kelly Show on WGCI AM, Dust Radio 1390. We are very honored and pleased to have in our studio the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. And the Cosmopolitan Chamber of Commerce show will air tomorrow on Sunday at 11 o'clock right here on Dusty Radio 1390. Let's go right back to the phones. Albert, thank you for holding. How are you today?
Good morning, Mr. Kelly.
How are you, sir?
And I'd like to say good morning to your guest, the Minister Farrakhan.
Good morning, sir.
I listened with great pleasure this morning to your show, Mr. Kelly, and to Mr. Farrakhan.
Thank you.
The minister made one remark that I got in late on your show, but I heard him mention about he wanted to purchase some land, and I was wondering what obstacle is he, hindrance is he running into in this, because Japanese, how much land do they own in America? England, how much land they own in America? The Arabs, how much land they own here? We are from here. What is the obstacle that's preventing that Minister Farrakhan from obtaining this land? And I'll hang up and listen, but I just want to make this quick remark before I hang up. Here's something for black people to ponder. We are 12% of the U.S. population, yet we reside on less than 1% of the land. Not 1%, less than 1%. Think about that, and I'll listen.
Thank you, Albert.
Thank you very much, brother. You raised a great point. There's nobody hindering us from buying land. The thing that's hindering us is money. Everybody is buying up America. The sad thing is, black folk built it. Black folks' blood soaked the soil of America. Black folks' blood soaked the soil of foreign lands for America, but we own less of it than anybody else. And that's why the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us to pool our resources. I said we wanted or needed at least 1 million acres of land. How much would 1 million acres of land cost us? If good fertile land is going at maybe $1,000 an acre, what is 1,000 times 1 million? And then let's talk about why we should pool our resources and stop making the dope merchant rich, the whiskey merchant rich, the pork merchant rich, and let's go pool some resource and buy up the land. Since the Japanese got it, the Germans got it, the British got it, let's get it. It's available.
9:50, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. Mr. Sufi, good morning.
Oh, good morning, and peace. I just greet you in peace. That's all I will say. Now, I'll be at the Martin Luther King Library about 12:30. Anyone can speak to me if they want to speak to me.
I want you to speak to the minister. What do you got?
Okay. The thing that I had a couple of things I wanted to talk about. One is I would like somebody to talk about the fallacy that the Arabs were heavily involved in our slavery. I'm talking about our slavery that brought us here to America. When I know good and well it was basically the British and the Portuguese and the British bankers, specifically the Jewish bankers, the House of Rothschild, who financed the ships and stuff. I know this for a fact. I wish people would really become educated on that fact.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that about the farms. We're going to go back to the farm deal. You know, I wish you would buy land in a civilized state like Michigan and Wisconsin and perhaps northern Illinois instead of, you know, when you go to the South, you know what happened when you did buy land in the 60s. They shot your cattle. They poisoned and they poisoned the cattle.
Yeah, but
those things.
But a brother is not a sheriff in those counties, Mr. Sufi.
Well, what I'm saying is they have cycles of this. They will repeat their cycles over and over again.
All right, let's get. We got some other people here. Let's follow those two. Okay, go back to the, if you will, Minister, to this first comment about slavery, slave trade among Arabs.
Well, you know, most of those who write books on our enslavement have always laid the blame on Arabs. And of course, if the Arabs have their part in it, which history says that they do, and some of our African forebears had their part in it, and they do. White Europeans have their part in it, and they do. But the Jews have never, ever publicized their part in bringing our fathers into slavery. Now, the reason I produced this book, or the nation produced this book, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, was not to foment anti-Semitism, but it was to declare to all of us that Africans, Arabs, Jews, Europeans, and so-called Americans had their hand in bringing black people into the degraded and wretched condition and position that we're in. So all of them should have their hand in helping to pull us up out of this condition. Now, certainly we need land in Illinois and Iowa and Michigan. But, brother, we need land in the South. You see all these young brothers today that are terrorizing the community? At heart, they're very good. With right guidance, those same brothers will become the greatest protectors of our community. One thing about corporate America, they'll do business because business is like warfare. But they also have little private armies that they have to protect their business. There's no way that we're going to have 1,000,000 acres or 1,000 acres of land and not have sufficient force to protect what we own. That's called doing business the American way.
Good. 9:53. Honorable Louis Farrakhan is our guest. On the line we have Ann. Good morning, Ann.
Good morning.
How are you?
Oh, just fine. And good morning to the minister.
Good morning, sister.
Now, let me say this here. I was down south, and I did look at 20 acres of land. And I see land all over the South. And I just don't see land. I can see cities, subdivision, whatever you want to call them, being built there. A lot of black people, when you think, mention the word land, and first thing they think of is agriculture. I mean, this is how you got Country Club Hills, Hazelcrest. They was fields. And, I mean, and you can build your own little town. Now, one thing, Mike Espy, he said anybody out there had any idea that would help the government save money, he said write him a letter, write it in crayon or ink pen or type it. And I do have some ideas, because I feel like this here. The government, do you know the government, 60% of the land in Wyoming is owned by the federal government. The government in every state of this country. The government pays people for not producing. I think if we came up with a plan, like you said, I'm not asking the white man to give me nothing. I will be willing to pay him or lease it. But we got to start somewhere.
Okay.
Here you have these chemicals. And see, this is one thing land is so important now. They have found out now that these chemicals, you got chicken producing 3 times a day, that is abnormal. And I think, see, you're going to need a big demand for smaller farmers to produce natural good, to eliminate all these diseases and stuff. And I think, see, this is an opportunity for black people. And I say the South is the place to go. People, hunt them out. Don't relocate us out of the city, push it in the suburbs. No, push you out the city. You need to be pushed down south.
Thank you, Ann. Appreciate your call.
Sister Ann, I don't have any comment but to say amen.
Okay, it's 9:55. Constance, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm very fine, thank you.
Good.
I would like to make a statement, and then I'll hang up.
Mm-hmm.
You were asking for contributions, maybe $120 a month or whatever.
No.
A year.
A year.
That's a year. Mm-hmm.
Is that so Louis Farrakhan could maintain and pay for the beautiful Art Deco mansion that he bought his daughter on Longwood Drive among the Southside Irish Catholics? Not in the name of Louis Farrakhan, but under the name that was given to him at birth.
Oh, sister, you have made a false statement.
Oh, no.
I own no. Let's just a minute now. You made your statement. Now, would you hear me, please?
And you paid him.
Miss, you made your statement. Would you hear me, please? If you could prove that I own property or my daughter on Longwood Drive in my name that was at birth, I will come before the world and give up teaching or leading people. I own nothing on Longwood Drive. The home that is mine is on Damon, and I don't have it in my daughter's name. It is in my name. Can you, sister, think of your leadership, and think of your ministers, and think of your president and your governor. They all live in fine homes. Are you saying that a man that teaches the people, a man that raises the level of consciousness of the people, a man that gives strength and moral direction to the people, does not deserve to live in a nice home? I'm not robbing anybody. If you don't wish to give, don't give. But don't try to crush somebody who would give with false statements.
Thank you, Minister. 9:58. Larry, good morning. Let's see if we can get one more in.
Yes, good morning, sir.
How are you, sir?
Fine, thanks, and good morning to the minister.
Good morning.
And I say to my other favorite talk show personality, Professor Dixon, I just want to say you great men. I humble myself in my mind, heart, spirit, and and also, good morning to you, Mr. Upshaw, and the rest of your staff. That's it. Y'all keep going. Keep it on.
Thanks, Larry. Appreciate it. Everybody's happy. Okay, Linda, we can take you if you make it real short. Linda, how are you?
I'm doing fine.
Good.
Hi, Mr. Farrakhan.
Hello.
I'm trying to find out, how do you go about being a Muslim?
Well, I tell you what, you come to the mosque tomorrow at 7351 Stony Island Avenue at 2 p.m., and we'll give you that information. And tomorrow, I'll be at Second Baptist Church in Evanston, Illinois at 1717 Benson. That's at the 8 o'clock service and at the 11 o'clock service. And I'll be at the mosque to give you part 2 of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X. 28 years later, what happened? Thanks to you, Cliff Kelly, and thanks to your wonderful audience for the honor and the privilege of being a part of your radio show.
Mr. Farrakhan, it has been wonderful, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, and we will, of course, follow tomorrow in part 2. Thank you so much for coming out. Not only is it always a pleasure and honor to have you here, but knowing the fact that this is the first time in, 3 years that you have... Yes, we sure appreciate it. Also want to thank WGCI and management for allowing us to extend the show so we could have more time with the minister. The Cosmopolitan Chamber of Commerce will air tomorrow on Sunday at 11 a.m. Also, thanks to Charles Upshaw. I want to thank our friend Munir Muhammad, who certainly has been helpful in getting us together. We appreciate that. We're running a little late. Thanks to everybody, and thanks to all of our callers. The time is 10 o'clock. This is WGCI AM, Dust Radio 1390. Remember, if it's Saturday, it's the Cliff Kelly Show right here, and thanks to all of you for being such great callers. We will see you next week.